We have been talking about this cycle for a long time now. You should be able to memorize it, see it in your sleep, have dreams about it. This should be branded in your brain, and for good reason. It's beginning with the second greatest commandment of loving your neighbors, getting into the lives of your neighbors, loving them and showing them who God is, introducing them to the gospel, introducing them to God and to Jesus Christ. And therefore, they willingly choose to love God. It's the greatest commandment in all of the universe. And then we need to move each other to serving others because James says that faith without works is dead. Paul says that we were created for good works. We were not meant as Christians to sit on our hands and to just simply show up to worship. Fortunately, we have a younger generation that is not okay with just sitting in the pews. They want to be active. They want to get into the lives of other people. I love that about the church. I'm excited for the future of the church, and I think we are in a really good position in this time in our lives for the church to really grow and to do great things for the kingdom. Our theme this year is becoming the hands and the feet of Jesus, and our theme verses come from Matthew 25:37 through 40. Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you? Or thirsty and give you a drink? And when did we see you a stranger and welcome you? Or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will answer them, truly I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers, you did it to me. And so obviously the king is saying, if you serve other people, it's as if you served me myself. Go out, serve people, and do it without question. And so as Christians, we owe it to God, we owe it to our neighbors, we owe it to people out in the community who are struggling. We owe it to them to serve them. I really struggled with today's sermon. I'm going to put this scripture out. It's going to be a while till we get there, so I'm just telling you now. I really struggled with today's sermon with what direction to go with it. And we're really talking about healing the sick and bringing healing to those who are suffering. But there are so many lessons in the story, and it's such a bizarre story. And Paul had bizarre things happen to him all the time. And this story, I think, is probably right up there as one of the weirdest stories in all of the Bible. There are just so many things packed into this. And so I struggled with, all right, do we talk about when life hands you hard things? Do we talk about having faith in the midst of adversity? Do we talk about the storm on the sea? Because that's what this story is about. And talk about God showing up in the middle of the storm. Do we talk about how life gets shipwrecked, like the shipwreck that Paul endured? It's kind of a metaphor for life crashing all around us, and we survive that. Do we talk about making one bad decision, or not even bad decision, but one decision that affects the rest of your life? Because that's in this story. Do we talk about being a good example to other people and that working in our favor? Because that's in the story a couple times. And I really struggled with what direction to go with this story. So while we're talking about Paul bringing healing to people, I think it's the circumstances leading to that point that I really want to focus on for this sermon, because it's just such a cool, powerful story. So we're going to back up. Excuse me. I hate this time of year for every single reason, but allergies is one of them. We're going to talk about Paul's defense. So I intentionally didn't put the scriptures up because we're going through a couple chapters and I'm just highlighting certain sections of this. So I just want you to listen to some of these scriptures. But Paul's giving his defense before King Agrippa before eventually he's put on a ship and he goes to Rome. He's going to give his defense before Caesar. Caesar, who's on the throne at the time, is Emperor Nero, the cruelest emperor in the history of Rome. He's a tyrant. He's literally psychotic. He ended up dying by suicide eventually after he just completely went insane. The guy was nuts. And so that's, first of all, who Paul appealed to. Paul kind of got frustrated. He wasn't really getting anywhere with his defense. And finally, he just kind of threw his hands up and he's like, you know what? I'm going to use my Roman citizen right. I'm going to appeal to Caesar. And the answer was, you appealed to Caesar you will go. All right, but there was a conversation after Paul made his appeal, and King Agrippa was just curious. He's like, I've heard a lot about this Paul guy, and I really want to hear him. Anybody who hears me this day might become such as I am, except for these chains. King Agrippa, when Paul said that, he gets up, he walks out. Here's the conversation that took place in private, out of earshot of Paul. This man is doing nothing to deserve death or imprisonment. And King Agrippa said to Festus, this man could have been set free if he had not appealed to Caesar. You want to talk about making a bad decision? When Paul appealed to Caesar, have you ever made a decision that you'll look back and you're like, okay, I can't take that back? And it radically changed everything in your life. Yeah, like we've all done it, right? We've all done things. We've bought cars that we regretted. We're talking about debt. We bought cars that we've regretted. We have buyer's remorse. Or maybe you bought a house that you can't take back. And you're like, uh-oh, what did I just do? Or you just make some really bad decision that has this chain of events. Well, Paul made this decision. He appealed to Caesar, and King Agrippa said, you know what? This man, there's no reason for him to be imprisoned. I would have let him go. Uh-oh. All right, so now Paul gets on a ship, and there's a centurion on the first ship. His name is Julius. This is in Acts chapter 27, if you want to kind of follow along. Verse 3, the next day we put in at Sidon, and Julius treated Paul kindly and gave him leave to go to his friends and be cared for. Kind of interesting, right? Everywhere that Paul went, people liked him. And I don't know about you, but when I read about some of the things that Paul says, he doesn't seem like the warm and fuzzy kind of guy that just gathers around a lot of friends, but he was likable. People liked him. So the centurion on the ship, Paul's a prisoner, keep in mind. This prisoner says, you know what, I like Paul, so while we're here at this island, Paul can kind of roam around, he can see his friends, he has free reign. I think that's really cool. So then they go back, they go into the waters, and it's wintertime, and they're having a really hard time. The wind is blowing, and it's hard to navigate the ship. So verse 6, the centurion found a ship of Alexandria sailing to Italy and put us on board. We sailed slowly for a number of days and arrived with difficulty off Cnidus. As the wind did not allow us to go farther, we sailed under the lee of Crete off Salmon, coasting along it with difficulty. Can you imagine this? It's wintertime, it's cold, the waters are cold, and you're on this big ship, and the wind is just smashing this thing all over the place. And so that what they do is they would put anchors in, and they wouldn't drop them all the way to the bottom, but they would just kind of help steer the ship along, like hugging the island, but not trying to not get too close. And they're kind of letting the wind push them back towards the sea, but you don't want to break loose and go like way out into the sea because you'd be a goner. And so the waves are crazy, the tides are crazy, the currents are crazy, the winds are crazy, and you're kind of coasting along just inch by inch. I can't imagine what that was like. So they came to a place called Fair Havens, near which was the city of Lasea. A lot of time went by, and Luke records that the voyage was dangerous. The fast was already past. And then verse 9, Paul advised them, saying, Sirs, I perceive that the voyage will be with injury and much loss, not only of the cargo and the ship, but also of our lives. Now, I want to ask you a pop question here, pop quiz. would you really be taking advice from Paul right now? Right? Paul made the decision to appeal to Caesar. They put him on a ship, they arrest him, and they're like, all right, they keep him in cuffs and they put him on the ship. And now Paul's going to give advice. When he made the decision to appeal, and he could have been let go. And now Paul's giving advice to the centurion of the ship, to the pilot of the ship. Do you think they're going to listen to him? Let's take a vote. Hands up if you think they're going to listen to him. No, they don't listen to him. The centurion paid more attention to the pilot and to the owner of the ship than to what Paul said. And then skipping down, verse 13, now when the south wind blew gently, supposing that they had obtained their purpose. In other words, all right, it's a nice calm wind. Now imagine the ups and downs, the emotional ups and downs as they're on this journey. They've been kind of beaten by the winds. They're kind of slowly, inch by inch, like hugging these islands. Now all of a sudden they get the wind that they were waiting for. It's this nice, calm south wind. Paul just warned them, and it's kind of like a na 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 na, like, right? Paul, what in the world were you worried about? We have this great southerly wind. We accomplished our purpose. They sailed along Crete with ease. They're close to the shore. Everything's going good. Verse 14, very next verse. But soon a tempestuous wind called the northeaster struck down from the land. And the ship was caught and could not face the wind. We gave way to it and were driven along. Running under the lee of a small island called Cauda, we managed with difficulty to secure the ship's boat. After hoisting it up, they used supports to undergird the ship. They're literally tying the ship together so it won't bust apart. Then, fearing that they would run aground, they lowered the gear and they were driven along. Verse 18, since we were violently storm-tossed, they began the next day to jettison the cargo. On the third day, they threw the ship's tackle overboard. Does anybody know what tackle is? Isaac, do you know what the tackle of a ship is? I didn't know. I had to look it up. Kind of. It involves nets. It's ropes, nets, pulleys, all the systems to work the sails and to steer the ship, to steer the rudder. Basically everything that makes this thing steerable, they start throwing that over. They throw it overboard. Why? Because they want to lighten the load. They're desperate at this point. When neither sun nor stars appeared for many days, and no small tempest lay on us, all hope of our being saved was at last abandoned. By the way, it's in the first person plural because Sir Luke was on that ship. Isn't that cool? Kind of crazy. Luke was an eyewitness to it. So as he's writing this, you're like, well, how does he get so much detail? Because he was there. All hope of our being saved was at last abandoned. We knew that we were dead meat. Including Paul. Paul thought this was the end. They had been without food for 14 days. I love what Paul says here. They're about to die, right? Like the end is inevitable. Here's what Paul says. Men, you should have listened to me. Clearly, Paul has never been married. You should have listened to me and have not set sail from Crete and incurred this injury and loss. Yet now I urge you to take heart, for there will be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship. And then Paul goes on and he says, I saw an angel. I saw this vision of this angel. The angel appeared to me and said, everybody's going to save their lives. Everybody's going to be alive. There were 270 some people, 276 people on the boat. The angel said, Paul, everybody's lives will be spared, but the ship will be destroyed. They let down, verse 29, they let down 4 anchors from the stern and prayed for day to come. You know what Paul did next? He took bread. He said, men, you haven't eaten for 14 days. He took bread, broke it in front of them, and starts eating. He said, you guys need to eat. You need to get your nourishment. You guys are tired. You haven't had sleep. You haven't eaten. So he physically took bread, broke it in front of them, gave thanks to God, and he begins to eat. In the very next verse, Luke says, and everybody was encouraged because of Paul, and they began to eat, and they were strengthened. I think that's really cool. Sure enough, after they eat, the ship strikes a reef. The waves are beating it. It's fallen apart. And the soldiers' plan, verse 42, was to kill the prisoners lest any one of them should swim away and escape. But the centurion, wishing to save Paul, it's kind of interesting. The centurion really likes Paul. Wishing to save Paul kept them from carrying out their plan. And then I want to jump down for time's sake. What happens is the soldiers tried to get away on the boat. They were checking on the anchors, and so they lowered a boat into the water, and their plan was to escape. And Paul caught them, and he said, unless everybody stays on the boat, no lives will be lost. Everybody has to stay together. So the centurion listened. They cut the ropes to the boat, sent it away as the ship is being beaten into a million pieces. And Paul says that those who can swim should swim. Everybody else grab onto pieces of the boat and try to make it to shore. Eventually they all make it to shore, and they wind up on this island called Malta. I love verse 2. The native people showed us unusual kindness, for they kindled a fire and welcomed us all, because it had begun to rain and it was cold. Like the mood swings in the story are all over the place. It's like, all right, 1 minute it's like, I told you so. 1 minute, like, there's this calm wind, and they're like, whatever, Paul. Then literally within hours, a northeastern hits them, and the ship is like, they're throwing stuff overboard, trying to save their lives. They haven't eaten. Like, it's just all over the place. And I have to think at this point, Paul's like, okay, God, what are you doing this time? I've been beaten, I've been arrested, I've been flogged, I've had all these things happen to me, and what are you doing with us? But, ... I trust you. You see, at no point did Paul give up on God. At no point did Paul start being a jerk to people. At no point did Paul just throw his hands up and say, okay, God, your will, like we say this cliche, right? Your will be done. Paul didn't do that. Paul hung on, and he said, God has to have a purpose. They wind up on this random island that nobody's even ever heard of before. It sounds that they don't really know what this island is, because Luke says, we then learned that the island was called Malta. It's almost like there should be a question mark after that. Like, Malta? And the people on the island showed unusual kindness. That's an interesting term. And then Paul's bitten by a viper. They make it to the island. Everybody's life is spared to them. There's a viper like hiding under the warmth of the fire. It comes out and it bites Paul in the hand. Well, if you know anything about vipers, they are absolutely deadly. So everybody's waiting around. They're waiting for Paul to die. And Paul shakes the snake off of his hand. Verse 6, they were waiting for him to swell up or suddenly fall down dead. But when they had waited a long time and saw no misfortune come to him, they changed their minds and they said that he was a god. Like, you can't get any more emotional swings in this story. Now the neighborhood, and this is where we pick up here on the screen. Now in the neighborhood of that place, there were lands belonging to the chief man of the island named Publius, who received us and entertained us hospitably for 3 days. Like, okay, here are these random people, including prisoners. I'm going to throw everything at them, and we're just going to entertain them and welcome them, and we're going to love them to death. And Paul, like Luke records, there was this unusual kindness. It happened that the father of Publius, the chief man of the island, the father of Publius lay sick with fever and dysentery. He's very, very sick. And Paul visited him and prayed, and putting his hands on him, healed him. Paul the prisoner, in front of everybody. 276 men on that ship were all witness to Paul placing his hand on Publius's father and healing him. And when this had taken place, the rest of the people on the island who had diseases also came and were cured. They also honored us greatly. And when we were about to sail, they put on board whatever we needed. You can't get a more cool story than this. And I guess the point is that a lot of times when we visit to the needs of the sick, that's the time in our life when we get really selfish and we're like, okay, I'm busy, I don't really have the time, I don't have the energy, whatever it is. Don't do that. No matter what life throws you, good, bad, and anything in between, tend to the needs of the sick. Pray with them, visit them, send them cards, let them know you think about them, let them know that you care about them. I was just talking to somebody the other day who said, nursing homes are just so hard. When my loved ones go to the nursing home, I just can't go. You know how often that happens? More often than not. I can't go because the smell and people are screaming and people are crying out in pain and I just can't bear to hear it and see it and smell it. I can't see that, and so unfortunately, when my loved one goes into a nursing home, I'm not there with them. I literally just had this conversation with somebody yesterday. Don't do that. Is it hard? Absolutely. You think Paul's ship journey was hard? A little bit. Just a little bit. Be a likable person who puts your faith in God and tends to the needs of the poor. And I promise God will bless it. You can't get more bizarre than this story. God will find a way to bless it. So no matter what you do it with full strength. Do it with a great attitude. Do it in favor of other people. Treat people with kindness and watch what God does with that. That's your message for this week. If there's anybody who's not yet taken that step to put Christ on in baptism and you're ready, or if you have prayer needs, we'd encourage you to come up. We're all going to stand and sing a song together. Jared?